Next up, we have a great speaker. So Graciela wants to teach you the importance of learning your authentic personal brand before entering civilian life. With over 9 years as a United States Air Force officer and aviator, and the author of the book B.R.A.N.D, Before Your Resume, your marketing guide for veterans and military service members entering civilian life. Graciela knows the ABCs of personal branding, and she will be joined with our very own Tanishka today to moderate the talk. So without further ado, here you have Tanishka and Graciela.
Thank you so much for that, Hunter. Hi, Graciela. How are you?
Good morning, Tanishka. I'm well and ready and excited to contribute.
Yeah, we are really very excited to have you here. And as I was reading about you and about your bio, I think I couldn't help but notice that you've done some really commendable work. And I think before digging in, I just want to start off with that you are a writer, you are an educator, and you are someone who has constantly been working on, making it better to represent the communities and people, especially veterans who are, underrepresented in certain places in society. What would you say piqued the inspiration for your book B.R.A.N.D? Like, how did you come to the idea?
Yeah, well, this book, Tanishka, is actually the result of about 9 years of live and virtual professional development workshops that I originally created for student veterans. And the inspiration came from a phone call from a particular Army veteran woman who was enrolled at Towson University in Baltimore, Maryland. And she basically called and said, can you please come out here and teach me and my fellow student veterans who are also starting side businesses because we're ambitious people, how to talk about ourselves? Because I see you doing it online, but you never seem to be bragging. And so when she asked that question, Tanishka, what I heard is she was clearly identifying a need that about 100% of us who transition out of the service have. And the need is this: reclaiming your individual identity that we lost when we entered the service and they gave us a uniform. In my case, a flight suit, but a uniform. What does uniform mean? We're all the same. On active duty, we're all the same. There's no I in team. That's the training, right? So then as civilians, suddenly we have to attract attention to ourselves, to secure interviews, to attract clients, and as entrepreneurs. And that's extremely uncomfortable for those transitioning from the armed forces. I want everybody that's watching today to really understand the uncomfortable feeling that we get when we have to talk about ourselves. And so when Dolly called me from Baltimore, she was asking for skills to regain that confidence that you get in the military with all the training that we get. We lose that confidence because now we're like, we don't have skills, right? She needed communication skills. The students there talk about their value and, they need to attract attention to themselves, right? And so all that was in that phone call to come out here and teach us how to attract attention to ourselves, because you know what? Attracting attention to yourself is literally the opposite of the ideal military experience. It's all about unit cohesion. So that call became the workshops, live and virtual, became the online class that's called Authentic Personal Branding for Military Veterans. And Tanishka, my work, when I'm finished training the people in the room, the veterans in the room, or the professionals in the room, everyone in the room has their new differentiated targeted branding completed by the time we wrap up. So that phone call became the workshops, became the class, became the book. And the way I use brand is an acronym. And the acronym is defined on the back of the book. It is become relevant, authentic, noticeable, and differentiated, which are all the things I believe you should do to intrigue people before you ever create a resume. Because then who's going to ask for it if you don't intrigue?
Absolutely. I think it's wonderful the way you've put it. And I mean, it makes total sense that, in the military or as a veteran, you're working towards a common goal, all of you. And there's like this, cohesion of identity, like you very rightly pointed out. But now you have to embrace your own unique and distinct identity and show it to the world. What have you got? And I think that transition is like, you're really working towards making it seamless for a lot of people. So you tell me that, what is it that that's so important? Like when it comes to a personal brand, why do we need to make it so impactful?
Right.
Like, I mean, how would you say that it today, especially in today's times, it serves as a precondition for you to jumpstart your career in a successful direction?
Right. Well, to answer that question, we have to stop and define what is a resume. And I'm going to answer the question as a marketing professional, right? A resume is a marketing deliverable. It is a marketing deliverable. You're putting it out there to market yourself, right? It is a thing you create. And so marketing deliverable is the way that professional marketers think about it. But we also know, we professional marketers know, that you never create a marketing deliverable until after you've done all the hard work of messaging, differentiated messaging, targeting the audience, messaging that motivates. What are the words? What are the adjectives? What's the power words? What do we know about the audience that we can say that's going to intrigue and catch their attention? It's marketing. A resume is marketing. And for veterans, when do we ever do marketing in the military? You just don't, right? And that is another way that it is so hard. So to create your brand, to create your story of your value, to draw upon the different areas of your life, as we do in the workshop, I ask 6 very specific questions. I give them a minute each to write down an answer. And in that process, you're being introspective, right? And you're going inside your own self to discover your value. And, military service is one of the 6 questions. There's a lot of other, dimensions to a military veteran. And so I ask these questions to help them go inside themselves and draw out those amazing characteristics and experiences and value. And that could be the thing that they reveal to the next audience, but we don't reveal that. We don't craft the brand until then we identify the target audience. Okay. So that process, it's a marketing mindset required to really think about what is unique about my experience. What is unique that I can share for this next audience? And I'll give you some examples later with the question you're going to ask me. But it is imperative to do this because there's just too much noise now. There's always been a lot of noise, but now there's a lot of noise. Right? And the American Marketing Association used to say it takes 3 times, 5 times, 7 times for a person to hear a message before they act. The recent number I saw is 11. You have to hear something 11 times before you take action. I mean, that's an average, right? So think about that. Think about what that means to you as a candidate. How many times you have to show up in different places to be heard. Small business owners know how hard it is, right? So it is to intrigue, to be the one that says something so amazing that just cuts through. That's why it's important. So really, step 1 is develop a personal brand to intrigue people. And then step 2, once you grab their attention, now customize your marketing deliverable, your resume for each and every role. But you got to intrigue them first.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. So, I mean, as someone who has spent 9 years as a United States Air Force officer and veteran, I mean, what I'm trying to ask you is that personal branding is an experience that becomes special, especially when it comes to empowering women veterans, perhaps over others, right? And I have been reading a lot about personal branding. I mean, when it comes to sort of rightly representing the underrepresented genders, women, and all the other genders, how do you think personal branding becomes impactful for people who are transitioning from military to corporate allies of America?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you an answer, and I'm going to give you an example. Okay. Think about the transition,
Sure.
What you just asked. Like, I was an aviator. So my job was aircraft navigator in a flying gas station. It's a tanker that is full of gas. Okay. So there's no civilian equivalent. So I knew that I was going to do something radically different when I got out. So let's think about this question. How in the heck did I ever land job interviews in Silicon Valley for technical global marketing management positions when I was doing that? Okay. And so in order to do that, okay, first of all, the most important thing, and let's talk about women. Okay. I had a massive network of women professionals who were civilians outside the base across a lot of different industries. And that included 2 particularly awesome mentors, 2 women veterans. one that had been out of the military for about 10 years and one that had been out about 6 months before me. So they surrounded me, that support group of, these women who said, girl, you've got all this time and you've got all this energy and you've got all this experience, but you have no idea what's out here. Right. I mean, they made me like, stop. So they guided me first to stop, to take the time, give myself the gift of time, which is the opposite of the military saying, hurry up and do your resume and get a job. Okay. And so they helped me to learn how to do informational interviews. They opened up their networks. I learned about different responsibilities, different type of corporate roles, different industries, because I knew nothing. I'm 31 years old, getting out of an aviation career, and I don't know the difference between an operations job in a company and finance. Marketing, I kind of knew, but not really, right? And so they taught me how to introduce myself with just the right skills that emphasize the people skills, the crew coordination, the high ops tempo in the environment, the ability to problem solve under pressure because we fly at 7 miles a minute. They taught me how to pick the things that I was really good at and put it into language for civilians to be intrigued by it. Okay. And the result for me was I went to a career conference in Colorado, like 2 weeks after I got out. I flew to Denver, Colorado. And you know what? I landed 5 on-the-spot interviews, just walking table to table, talking to different companies who were there recruiting, people with graduate degrees in business. 5 interviews with no resume. It would say, do you have a resume? I really want to know more about that. I'm like, not yet, but I'll get you one, But they're like, do you have time to interview right now? Because they were intrigued by my introduction. So I had been taught how to intrigue people, how to brand, how to say something that the person coming before me and after me at the table is not going to say. And it was always a blend of, globally savvy, trilingual professional, able to problem solve when time is of the essence under mission critical conditions, right? And, and ready to bring my skills into your satellite launching company or whatever, right? But 5 interviews with no resume. Okay. And that is what happens over and over again to people who know how to do this, who know how to brand. And then you go back and you do a perfectly targeted marketing deliverable resume, right? For that specific opportunity that you were interviewed for. And so of those 5 interviews, I got 4 second round interviews after I created the resume. And that was really important. But, I'd like to share, if I could, an example of what it sounds like when veterans learn this skill, when veterans learn to talk about themselves. And I think it's really important to share what they sound like because, again, it's a marketing mindset that they adopt. Okay, so here's one from Portland State. I'm Jared, civil engineering student. While working at Union Pacific as a conductor, I became fascinated by the feats of civil engineering that made the railroad possible. While serving as a combat advisor in the Middle East, I used my tenacity and creative problem-solving skills to teach and mentor host country soldiers on complex tasks by overcoming linguistic and cultural barriers. I look forward to bringing these skills and my experiences to your engineering firm and projects. Wow, a veteran said that? Yeah, a veteran said that because there's so much value to draw upon, but they have to learn how to brand, how to intrigue. And the next engineering student that comes up to talk to that firm's representative is not going to say that. And that's what I teach.
Absolutely. So, like from what I've gathered from all the things that you've just said, the importance or the art of storytelling really matters when, you're talking about yourself, especially if you transition from this military lifestyle and, everything is just, I don't know, people just expect that, when you're in a social atmosphere, it can be pretty overwhelming for a lot of people like you who have transitioned, right? So how do you how do you put emphasis on this art or the idea of storytelling in itself when it comes to personal branding? Like, it's not just about the experiences that you have or the learning or the sort of internships or the community experience, but also about how do you present it? How do you talk about it, about yourself? Like, how did you get through all of those interviews without a resume?
Well, it's the intriguing story. Yeah, the intriguing story. And so imagine that there's a health fair for careers going on. And then you are the HR representative and you've been talking to all these people who want to be nurses. And now you're bored. It's like the 4th hour and they're coming up and they're going blah, 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 blah. And they're all sounding the same. Okay. Now imagine that B.R.A.N.D comes up and says this. Hi, I'm B.R.A.N.D, a former gas turbine engineer in the Navy who recently graduated with a bachelor's degree in science and nursing. I'm competent, dependable, and caring, traits I know you're looking for in your next labor delivery nurse. I look forward to advocating for my patients and inspiring women and moms at your hospital. Is that storytelling or is that storytelling?
Yeah.
You have this image in your mind of a gas turbine engineer in the Navy who, that sounds like hard steel combat, right? But then she just finished her nursing degree and she's a nurturing person. She can't wait to deliver babies in your hospital. You think you might want to interview her?
Of course. Yeah. I get it.
So that storytelling is absolutely essential. And the confidence to be able to do that, it doesn't come automatically. Like I said earlier, it is absolutely the opposite of the military experience for all of us. We don't want to attract attention to ourselves because it's probably not a good thing. And so to then suddenly have to do this for yourself, it doesn't happen automatically. The program that the congressionally mandated program called Transition Assistance Program before you leave the service is a day or 2 long compared to all the time they trained you to do your job in the military. It's like, here's some things Congress says we have to show you by. It's never been a professional development program, which is another thing I want recruiters to understand is we are woefully unprepared for all the steps, the professional steps, the workforce development steps that you all have been doing since you got out of college and while you've been in college, all that stuff you've been practicing, we don't know any of it. We don't know how to network. We don't know how to reach out and introduce ourselves to make a networking connection. It's extremely uncomfortable, right? And so I think that's one of the things I want to make sure everybody understands is the discomfort that veterans have of talking about themselves and that it takes a while. It takes mentoring, it takes examples like what I'm showing you, which is why I put 28 examples in this book so that people can read, wow, veterans sound like that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sure those who are going to read that book will obviously feel very inspired. I would also like to take this moment to urge the audience to please send in their questions. I'm sure Graciela has a lot more interesting and very inspiring things to say to you. On that very note, I want to ask, to what extent would you say that your work and emphasis on a personal brand represents this unique and diverse identity of a lot of veterans that, you know, they've been unwilling to embrace to a large extent? I mean, when you talk about storytelling, you are also essentially talking about embrace what has happened to you. And it's not just the traumatic parts. It's not just the part where you had to choose between taking care of your family or deciding to serve. It's not just, you know,
Right.
taking the skull and like, you know, like sort of being there for your nation, but also the other responsibilities or the other baggage that comes with it.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think what you are doing causes a lot of acceptance towards those things. So how do you do that? Yeah.
Well, I think I'm thinking of a specific woman up in, I met her at the University of Idaho. I was there for the Student Veterans of America Pacific Northwest Regional Conference. And I think 20 different colleges and universities gathered. And I'm remembering her name is Kristen. And, you know, we're talking about the baggage and you're talking about the stuff that it's there, right? So Kristen came to the conference as a community college student and her aspiration was to go work at a state level economic development department, you know, like helping people go back to work. And she said she wanted to be a social worker. And so when we were doing the branding exercise, I noticed that one of the things she wrote down about, you know, one of the questions that I ask is, what are the 2 most interesting things that ever happened to you? And that's wide open. It can be anything you want. And she had written down, I survived domestic violence. And I thought, okay. See, so, you know, you're brainstorming, you write these things down, but then you have to choose what you're going to present in your story for the next audience, right? And so I was so surprised, you know, because I show examples and stuff. And so she'd seen the examples. I was so surprised when she stood up and she read her brand at the end. And she introduced herself as Kristen, Army veteran and domestic violence survivor. because that's pretty bold to say that in your story, right? In public. But the reason she did it is because she says, and there's so many women like me that I know that with the leadership experiences from the Army and leading men and women, coupled with my firsthand experience with domestic violence and surviving it, that I'm the ideal social worker for the EDD to help all women get back to work. And it was just a bomb of a brand. It was like, oh my God, like heart stopping. Again, who else is going to say that? Okay. And what I love telling people when I tell this story is that Kristen was hired after graduation by the Washington State EDD exactly into the role that she wanted. Okay. And then within 6 months was able to buy a house for herself and her little boys. Okay. So the video that she gave at the website that we're going to share at the end, there's testimonials from veterans. She says in that video that this process of branding gave her back her self-esteem. This process of branding returned the self-confidence that she had lost in that chasm, that's military civilian divide, where we fall in. Okay. It gave her confidence because it gave her the skills. It's about the skills. We are highly trained, highly confident in the military because we get trained. Out here, we suddenly feel incompetent. And so when she got the training and when she was able to stand up and present what she wants and why she's perfect for it, and then have examples of how you do that confidently and powerfully, it's all you need. And then the veterans go off and do it, and amazing things happen.
Definitely. I think that's a very inspiring thing that you just told us. And I'm so glad that you've shared this with all of us. Would you say personally that, the work that you're doing, the sort of, upliftment and this push, this power push, I would say, that you're giving to all of these women, to all of these people, it's also to a large extent affecting the workforce that, we are applying to become more equitable and more diverse and accepting of all of these people with these stories.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen that difference happening? Like, like in the workforce? Yeah.
Well, yes, because the training of veterans and their spouses. Okay. I always invite the spouses, and I do this work on university campuses, and we invite the spouses. Community-based veteran serving organizations invite the spouses. Corporations, when I do the ERG groups, usually the spouses aren't there, but they should be. Okay. And so when you do that, when you bring these skills to military veterans and spouses, guess what? There is no more diverse community that exists in this country other than the US military. So by virtue of giving the skills, and I don't like to say empowering because that seems like you have to explain what power are you giving them, right? Enabling. Okay. I'm enabling them to reclaim their self-esteem, their confidence. I'm filling the gap of that skill they don't have, and suddenly they have it. And that's then they're like standing up and reading it, right? And then when you give those skills to this diverse community, and then they know what they want to find, right? And then they connect with the right position, then that's where it can begin to really reflect a more diverse workforce, because you're recruiting directly from the military. 300 people leave every day, right? And the work that I'm doing, Tanishka, it's been lovingly called the counterculture approach to how the military attempts to unteach you as you leave the service. Someone called it your approach is counterculture. I'm like, it is, because they're like, hurry up and do your resume because you're leaving in a couple of weeks, and get a job. And here you are like, I don't know what exists, right? And so my work has been called the counterculture attempt, or the counterculture approach to how the military trained you. And I love that because I focus on introspection, especially with the diverse workforce that's only worked in the military, right?
That must be very rewarding.
Yeah. And then focus on the messaging, focus on the learning, and then adopting that marketing mindset.
So I have a question from the audience here. Hi, Graciela. How do you approach networking, and how does the aspect of networking change when a veteran is doing it? Especially, how do you handle the imposter syndrome as a veteran?
Okay. I love this one. Okay. So networking is, I think if I did a poll of military veterans and I said the word networking, everybody would like hold their nose and say how stinky, and they don't want to do it. Because unless you've been taught the networking skill, which we have not,
Absolutely.
Networking in the military is you have to go to the party because somebody is retiring. And then you go there and you're like, oh, I don't want to be here. Okay. And so that's not networking. That's like someone told you have to go. So how I approach networking comes right back to those women I told you that mentored me. Tanishka, I was so lucky. Okay. They taught me principled networking. And they taught me that when you show up at an event, don't be like the needy person that I need, because nobody wants to be around that needy person. Principled networking means that I'm showing up to give. And that's something very comfortable for veterans because we serve, right? So what I was taught by this woman veteran, she says, you show up to give. And I said, what do I have to give? I don't know anybody. She said, yeah, you do know people. You've been volunteering for this conference. You know the speakers in Spokane. You've been working with the Girl Scouts. You've got a big network to give. So show up to give your network to whoever needs it. When you put your networking hat on like that and you show up to give, then you're suddenly engaging with people because you're bringing them something, you're serving them, right? And then they want to serve you back later when you need them. But that's how I approach it, is I'm showing up to give. And that's what I teach the people that I coach.
Showing up to give. Oh my
Showing up
God,
to
that's
give.
definitely going to be a major
Yeah.
takeaway for a lot of people. I think
Networking
that's,
is to give.
yeah, I think even if like, you have a personal brand and you're going there, you want to tell a story, or even if you want to network, I don't think it can like sort of go around with the completely selfish reason of I want to go and get something. This
Right.
giving urge, I think it definitely opens more doors and opportunities for you.
Yeah.
I have another
It
question from the
feels more
audience.
comfortable, right? It's more comfortable for us
Absolutely.
too. Yeah.
Of course. So Jessica asks, do you have advice for military spouses with long career gaps and or major changes due to repeated relocations?
Mhm. Absolutely. Okay. It's the exercises that I do in here bring out the best of different parts of your life, no matter what the condition. So you brainstorm these 6 different areas, you think about what you want to do next, and then you just keep facing forward. Okay, because the many moves, the fact that you were in the military and maybe you were a sniper, but you don't want to say that. There's all these things that we've done that we could say, but we shouldn't say them that way. Okay. Same with the military spouse. You don't have to showcase your gaps. Okay. Someone's going to notice on the resume. But the whole idea of gaps is there isn't a gap. You were doing stuff in there, right? So I think one of the most important things for spouses is do the exercises, figure out your messaging of how you're going to position that. And instead of thinking of them as gaps, they weren't gaps. You were the CEO of your home. You were the logistics manager for a team of 6 for your family. You were the event coordinator for your kids' school. Okay. So those gaps are just other activities and volunteer opportunities that you can talk about. So I would say don't think of them as gaps, and then show them as volunteer things that you did, and including, if you were at home or moving a lot, give it a name, brand it. Brand it, and then take it
Yeah.
forward, and then show yourself in total of what you've been able to do. You've been working around the world, around the country, while managing little people and events. And that skill set is amazing if you know how to talk about it and present it.
Absolutely. I think if anything, this conversation has, and I speak for, I think everybody who's watching, it has definitely led us to believe that anything that happens to us is like, it can really become a very life transforming thing if we just choose to look at it that way. And I think it starts with how we look at it. And then it's the second thing, how we present it or how we decide to brand it. So I guess absolutely that's
right.
been
And
a thing, yeah.
one more thing that I haven't said yet that's so important is, so many times veterans, when they fall into this gap of, I'm losing my identity, they think of themselves as entry level workers, and they're not. And veterans are leaders. I don't want veterans, I don't want recruiters, I don't want hiring managers stereotyping and thinking of veterans as warehouse truck drivers. They're not 18-year-old kids that have never worked and need their first job. And so veterans, please, you're a leader, present yourself as a leader. And recruiters, please understand that you're recruiting a leader, and and hiring managers expect to pay a leader. These are not entry-level people. Okay. They've worked from 4 to 8 to 20 years. So they're looking for a new opportunity, but they're not entry level. And I cannot emphasize that point enough. Veterans are leaders.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Graciela. This has been an amazing, insightful discussion. I'm sure our audience would love to reach out to you. And over to you, Hunter.
Thank you both. Thank you, Graciela. Thank you, Tanishka. I love that. The CEO of your home. And now more than ever, right? That we're, we're all, a lot of us are working from home. Can't see it, but that's where I am right now. We're all doing it. And I just love the reframing. The reframing that you are offering up here is just completely empowering. So thank you so much.
And that's what we need to do. It's a reframing of how we first think about it. It's introspective work first, and then the messaging, and then you go forth with it to the right audience. And that's marketing mindset. That's branding. That's what we need to do with our military community.
Awesome. Thank you so much.